now, another interesting session where our guests will talk about the path to double profit. I'm joined here in the studio with Insider's Finance Features Correspondent, Danielle Walker. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. In the past year, many investors have wanted to make an impact with their capital on issues from racial inequity to climate change. Still, many need guidance. I'll be asking our panelists about new impact investing opportunities and ways the public and private sector can partner. I am joined by Warren Valdmanis, a partner at 2 Sigma Impact. Warren, can you expound a bit on the work 2 Sigma Impact does and its focus?
Absolutely. So, 2 Sigma Impact is a private equity business focused on workforce issues. And so, what does that mean? First, it's because it's a private equity business. That means we buy companies. We usually are in a position to control those companies, and we're usually involved with those companies for many years, often as long as 5 or 6 years. And so we have both the opportunity and the responsibility, frankly, to think long-term in our governance roles with these companies. The second thing about 2 Sigma Impact is that we're focused on workforce issues. So the business is predicated on the idea that good jobs is good business, and investing in people is actually a great way to drive long-term value at companies. And I think that the observation that I would make is that many American companies have forgotten how to be great employers to their detriment. And we think there's a big opportunity, especially within private equity-owned companies, to drive long-term value by investing in people. And the third thing is, because our parent is 2 Sigma, we are a data-driven business. 2 Sigma is a financial sciences company that employs about 1,000 data scientists and has a large reservoir of data. And so we have the ideal parent for helping to bring the impact investment world from the artisanal place where it began to a more scientific place where we understand better how to measure social output and how to connect it to long-term value creation, which I think is a critical link to establish if we hope to bring this field forward.
Thank you so much. And you made a great point about companies forgetting to be good companies. Can you tell me a bit about how the pandemic in the past year has impacted the work that you guys do? And more generally, how has it shaped the private equity space?
Yeah, so the pandemic has, I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that it has helped the investment world to focus on the S in ESG. So I think that it's long been understood that good governance is important to corporations. And then I think it's increasingly being understood that strong environmental practices are critical for corporations. But S has been the forgotten letter of ESG for a long time because social issues are tricky to measure. Things like good jobs are tricky to measure. But I think that the pandemic has shed light on how important these issues are. And how I think just the image of seeing frontline workers out there being exposed during the pandemic, I think has focused a lot of attention on how important workers of all levels of seniority are in companies, and how important it is that we think better about how to interact with those workers and how to empower those workers. And so I do believe that the pandemic has accelerated a focus on the S and ESG. But I will note that workforce issues were important long before the pandemic. In America, 50% of workers describe themselves as disengaged, but 13%, that's 1 in 8 workers, is so disaffected by how they're treated on the job, they actively work against the interests of the companies that employ them. 1 in 8 workers in America. And so this is a big issue, both socially as well as commercially.
And in the past year, what are some specific areas that investors have wanted to make an impact?
Yeah, so I would say that a lot of the thing that has held back impact investing up to this point has been a lack of clear measurement. And frankly, that is the thing that's held back, I think, the S and ESG. And so, if you talk to 10 different labor economists about what their definition is of a good job, you'll probably hear 10 different answers. Our belief is that until you can set a benchmark and actually really have a clear measure for what a good job is, it's really hard to show progress at a company. And so we've spent a lot of time over the past year working on a definition of what a good job actually is. We spent time with a large consulting firm trying to come up with that definition. And what we found is that, while most folks would disagree on the exact definition, Most people agree that a good job is characterized by fair terms of employment, pay, benefits, how you're scheduled, etc. It's characterized by some form of career path where you have a future at your employer and you have the training to support that, so training and career path. And then finally, some affiliation with the mission of your company, some feeling that the firm you work for plays an important role in society in some way. And when those things are present, that activates the discretionary effort that all of us have, that extra little bit, when you get up in the morning, that extra little bit of energy that you bring to your job.
And what do you think if there is a difficulty in measuring impact? What is the very first thing that investors should do?
Increasingly, there's this focus on measurement, which I think is a really good thing. And I know that there's talk about mandatory disclosure around workforce issues, which for public companies, which I think would be a really positive step forward. Because today, many investors, they realize that workforce issues, the quality of the workforce health, these issues matter to a corporation. In fact, humans drive every corporation, but they don't have a lot of visibility today on that issue. And so it's a little bit like, as someone told me the other day, it's a little bit like measuring the performance, measuring the quality of a car by just looking at the speedometer. If a car is moving or moving fast, you can tell that the car is working. But if you don't know what's inside the hood, if you don't know the quality of what's inside the hood, you don't know how long it's going to be working for. And so I think it's really important to have better disclosure around what's actually happening inside of a workforce at a company.
And to this point, do you think that there have been any investing frameworks or benchmarks that have been particularly helpful, or are there areas where you would like to see that?
Yeah, I think there have been many different measurement heuristics that have been put forward that I think many of them are helpful. In particular, I really liked what the World Economic Forum put forth back in, I think it was in August, with the Big Four accounting firms. They put forward a framework for reporting on ESG issues that I think would be a big step forward. And notably, that particular framework was a practical one. It was the kind of thing that companies could do without a huge lift in terms of changing how they collected information at the companies. And so I think that there are some good standards out there. The challenge is there's too many standards, and we need to start harmonizing around fewer standards. But it's not surprising that we're in this space. It's taken us nearly 100 years to get accounting reporting to where it is today, which I think is, by the way, a really good sort of metaphor for ESG measurement. So I think we're on a path, but I think it's going to be important in the next few years to really coalesce around a small number or a single standard.
And I'm wondering, if you are an investor, whether institutional or an individual investor, what happens when the investment strategy is not making the intended impact or falls short of the goal?
Well, it's of course true, Danielle, that anytime you set out to do something at a company, there's risk that you won't achieve it. And to me, the most important thing is not that you achieve your objective every single time you set an objective. The most important thing is that your objectives are clear and that you set in motion the right set of events to achieve them. And then to the extent you don't achieve them, it's clear why you didn't and you're able to correct them. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. Our first investment in Two Sigma Impact is in a vocational training business. It's a business that's called Penn Foster. It trains about 300,000 students per year to get middle-income jobs, jobs like veterinary technician or nurse's assistant or HVAC repair, things like that. Jobs that pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. And it's a relatively low-cost program. It's typical program costs somewhere between $750 and $1,000. And so, we're big believers that this business has the potential to change lives, and lots of lives. That being said, it doesn't always achieve it. Only about a quarter of students today actually graduate from their programs. So what we've set out to do in collaboration with management is to work on improving outcomes. That's a long process, and it starts with better measurement. It starts with knowing where you are today, and then ultimately figuring out how to make that change.
Well, that is a great takeaway for our audience. You've shed light on how impact investing is evolving in light of the sea changes we've seen this past year. Thank you for this excellent discussion on what is a very important topic, and it was a pleasure having you, Warren. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, Warren, for such an enlightening conversation around impact investing.